Hello, good morning. Dear friends, now we have spent almost more than 5 months with this coronavirus, COVID 19. Now it is spreading like anything and it is increasing exponentially. Every day, more than around 70 to 75,000 positive cases are being recorded in our country itself. So we are in that situation now. Now these days we are hearing different words like immunity, herd immunity, vaccines, different types of therapies. So I did some research on this, and I would like to share some basic knowledge of these words. I'm not a biologist student. I'm not a microbiologist, but with simple words, I would like to explain these things with layman's words. Okay, so my heading is herd immunity. So before getting into that herd immunity, first, what is immunity? First of all, so immunity. What is immunity? So immunity is defined as the ability to fight against antigens such as virus, bacteria, or any kind of toxins that enters into the body of an organism and tries to destroy the cells of it. So it's the ability of an organism to fight against the antigens. Okay. So how it fights and all that we'll see later. So there are basically two types of immunities. Two types of immunities are there. So I told you what is immunity, and the types of immunity are, there are two types. One is innate immunity, and that is adaptive. So what is innate immunity? Comes from the birth itself. By birth, whatever the ability to fight against any diseases or any virus or bacteria is there, that system which is present in the body in an organism is called the innate immunity. Okay, so it consists of the basic physical barriers like skin and some mucous membranes and some special cells that are present in the body of an organism, special cells and proteins which are present, which are meant to fight against any antigens. Antigens means virus, bacteria, or toxins. Just remember this. So there is an inbuilt which came by birth to any organism to fight against these things. That is called the innate immunity. Okay, so now here, this innate immunity system, which consists of the physical barriers and special cells and proteins, they don't have the ability to memorize the fighting strategy. Just remember, this is a fighting strategy to against the antigens. Okay, so whenever any virus or bacteria enters into the body of an organism, so the innate immunity system will immediately try to attack it and fight against it, and it will try to destroy it. In that process, it may cause some damage to the body itself, and the virus also may cause some damage to it. In that fighting process, there may be a lot of loss to the body, but they don't have the memory of the fighting strategy in there. So that means when the virus or bacteria when the infection comes again the next time, the body of an organism cannot fight against it so easily. It will start the fight again from the beginning. It has to build the strategy again. It lost the memory of how it fought in the first time. So the memory is not there. So that is the thing. There's no memory here. So innate immunity system consists of physical barriers, such as skin, mucous membranes, and special cells and proteins, some special proteins. So they consist of the innate immunity system. These cells, immunity system, nothing but some kind of cells in the body, okay, present in the body, which are meant for fighting against any foreign bodies that are entering into it to damage the cells, the living cells. Okay, so now, but the drawback of this is that there is no memory, okay, no memory. That means when the infection happens again the second time, so the body cannot react immediately to that, but it will start the process again from the beginning. The strategy, it has to build a strategy how to fight against the virus or the bacteria or whatever it is. So the strategy is going on again. The same process will take, and the damage will keep on happening to the body of the organism. So in the adaptive immunity system also will be developed in the body itself, body of an organism. But during this process, there are some, the white blood cells which are present in the body, and they will produce some antibodies. They will produce some antibodies, and these antibodies will memorize. They are basically the trained person, the trained army, and they'll keep that memory in their their DNA. And when the infection happens again, they are very much ready to fight against it immediately, without being causing any damage to the organism, the living cells of the organism. Okay, they'll protect. The fight happens immediately. That means the army. You can consider this immunity system as an army. So in this innate immunity system, the army is not so intelligent here. So it is not having the memory capability. So they are dumb. The dumb army here. The same army, out of this, some white blood cells, which are nothing but meant for fighting against the viruses, antigens, they will memorize the strategy. They are very intelligent, trained army people in this immunity system. They're called antibodies. Antibodies are nothing but white blood cells, some particular trained white blood cells, special trained white blood cells, which learned how to fight against a particular virus, a particular antigen. Just remember, only for that particular antigen. So for example, for example, this COVID, coronavirus, the virus. So for that particular virus, when that entered into the body of a person, and if he develops the antibodies, and these antibodies are basically a trained cells which are capable of fighting against that virus and kill them without causing any harm to the body immediately. They're trained, they're very much trained, So, but untrained people also will try to kill the bodies, the antigens. But during this process, they'll take a lengthy process to fight against it, and during that process, the body, the body of the organism, the useful cells also will be damaged, and it will cause a lot of damage to the body, and it will cause some lot of side effects and diseases to the body, And whereas the antibodies, the trained particles, the trained army here will not cause any damage to the body, and immediately they will attack and they will kill the virus. They'll eradicate the virus. Understand? That's a different. So we have an adaptive immunity system and innate immunity system. So innate immunity system is there in every person's, in every organism. It is there. So every living being, living organism is designed and is created to survive. And this survival, food is required, water is required, and also to fight against the antigens. Antigens will enter into any animal also. They will. There is a system in itself. God has put that system. Okay, so a system itself is taking care of it. Alright, so these antibodies, how the antibodies will be developed in a particular organism. So for these antibodies to be developed, the body has to receive, it has to see the enemies and how they'll attack, and it has to understand how they attack, and then only the body will make a strategy, and it will make an army, and it will train the army to properly fight against that enemies. First of all, they have to face the enemies. That means the enemies means here the virus. The virus has to enter into the body of an organism. After entering, after the virus is entered, or the bacteria, the antigen is entered, and the body will keep on developing certain, in that process itself. It will take some 14 days. 14 days after the organism is infected. I call it infected. That means the antigens have entered into the body. When the antigens have entered into the body of the organism will take 14 days to develop antibodies. So it will take 14 days. And again, it depends on virus to virus and types of, and person to person, and organism to organism. It may take some different times. Okay, some people may not be able to develop antibodies, and they will have to depend on this innate immunity system itself, which is not so effective, and also it will cause a lot of damage to the organism itself, and that damage may lead to the fatality, may become fatal also. The organism may become fatal. Alright, so the antibodies have to be developed. So the adaptive immunity has to be there for, when I call the immunity here, so we are talking about adaptive immunity, not the innate immunity. So when a person, or let us limit our immunity system to the human beings now. Now we are talking about the coronavirus. So now the person's, it will take 14 days. Okay, it will take 14 days for this antibodies to be developed after exposed to the virus. Directly, it can be developed in two ways. It can be developed in two ways. One is direct exposure to the virus, or through infection. You can call it as through infection. Through infection means after a person getting infected by the particular virus. Second, through a vaccine. Through a vaccine. Okay, so either by the infection itself. Now, suppose now I am there. So now my body, I have a lot of cells in my body, and a lot of immunity cells are there in my body, white blood cells are there, but they don't know now. Right now, they don't know how to fight against this coronavirus, because my body has not seen that enemy inside. So now the body has to see that enemy cells in order to train itself how to fight against it. Okay, so now the body has to be exposed to the virus. That means the body has to be infected. Okay, so when the body is infected by the virus with a little dose, maybe not very high infection, with a little dose, so within 14 days my body, if I have if I'm strong enough and healthy, and then body itself will take care of itself how to fight against that particular antigen virus, and it will make the trained antibodies in myself, and I become immune to this. I become immune to this particular virus, for example, say this coronavirus. So now my body becomes immune to coronavirus. So I am an immune person to this coronavirus. Okay, and the second way of achieving this, but through infection, if I have to get immunity through infection, it is risky. It is risky to so many people. Why? Because if a person is healthy, it may not cause a lot of damage. It has to go through this, because my innate immunity system is there only now, right now. So now it will fight initially, haphazardly, untrained only. So during the fighting process itself, at the end it will understand how the enemy, how the virus is behaving, and then it will learn how to create, how to make, how to train that immunity system, how to make the antibodies. So to make a trained army in my body, it is taking 14 days, of course, but during that process, a lot of damage may happen. In my body. Okay, so the damage is happening. So if the adaptive immunity to take place through infection, it will cause damage. It will cause damage to the human body. If he is not healthy enough, definitely it will cause some damage. That means it will make the person sick. A lot of ailments may happen. The second way of achieving this adaptive immunity to a particular virus is through vaccine. So how do we achieve this adaptive immunity through vaccine? So first of all, what is a vaccine? Let us see what is a vaccine. Okay. Vaccine. What is a vaccine? So vaccine is nothing but it mimics the virus, it mimics the antigen, virus or bacteria. It will act like that antigen itself, and it is being injected to a particular person. When it is injected to me, so for example, that vaccine is nothing but it is given as an injection. It contains certain particles which are mimicking, which are like dupes to that particular virus, for example this coronavirus. But these cells which are there in the vaccine, which are mimicking a particular virus, are not harmful to the body of the organism to which this vaccine is given. So if I'm receiving a vaccine, it is made in such a way that it is just mimicking the behavior of the virus, but it will not cause any harm to my body cells. Okay, so when they enter into my body, but the virus actually, they will enter into the cells and they will reproduce. They will make the body cells to reproduce themselves also. So it will make copies of itself, and it will multiply. But a vaccine is made in such a way that when it enters into the body, it will not multiply. Vaccine is basically, it mimics virus. It mimics virus, but with two things: does not multiply and does not harm the cells, of the body. Okay, so when it does not multiply and when it does not harm the cells of the body, there is no problem. But why it is given? When a vaccine which is mimicking the virus entered into the body of a person, and my body sees that as a foreign material, assumes that it is an antigen. It does not know that it is a vaccine. It is made by man itself, and it assumes that it is basically a virus itself. And then it will train its innate immune system to make antibodies. A trained army to fight against that particular virus, the vaccine, in the form of vaccine, and then it will create the antibodies. By this way, we are enabling the person to generate antibodies against that particular virus without doing any harm to the body, without causing any diseases to happen in the body of a person. So that is the vaccine. That is how the immunity has been developed. The adaptive immunity has been developed into the particular person through vaccine. So there are two ways a person can achieve adaptive immunity to a particular virus: through natural infection or through vaccine. Okay, through vaccine. So now the vaccine is nothing but the virus itself that mimics the virus itself, but does not cause any harm to the body. Does not cause any harm to the body, and also does not multiply. Two things: does not multiply. So only a particular simple small dose is given, and then that will enable the body to develop antibodies. Okay, clear? In the adaptive immunity is, again, there are two types in adaptive immunity. Is again of two types. It's active and passive. Active and passive. So what is active adaptive immunity? In case of active adaptive immunity, the immunity system, that means the making the trained the fighting army in the person, is happening naturally, either through vaccination or through natural infection, which happened in the body itself. So suppose I have to achieve an adaptive immunity to coronavirus, I'll be given a vaccine or I'll be infected by the coronavirus itself, and in 14 days, 2 weeks of time, my body has developed antibodies in myself, which are trained particles to fight against the virus if it happens to attack me once again. The second time infection, when the infection tries to attack me second time, my body is ready to fight without doing any harm to me. Okay, so that is basically in the active immunity, active adaptive immunity. It is developed in the person's body naturally, by itself, either by naturally or through vaccination. But in the passive immunity, passive adaptive immunity, what is passive adaptive immunity? So in the passive adaptive immunity, it happens in the infant in the mother's womb. If there is an infant in the mother's womb, infant is protected by the mother's blood only. Okay, so the antibodies are not built or not developed in the infant itself, because there is no circulatory system. There's the blood is supplied through the mother itself, through placenta. Okay, so the antibodies which are developed in the mother are supplied to the infant through the placenta. So that is a passive adaptive immunity. So the infant in the mother's womb will reach adaptive immunity to a particular virus through the mother's blood, which is passing to it through the placenta. Okay, the infant in the mother's womb. Also, a newborn baby will also develop adaptive immunity through the breastfeeding, by drinking the milk of the mother. Through that milk itself, it will receive the antibodies required to fight against a particular virus. Okay, through breastfeeding or through placenta. Through placenta or through breastfeed for babies. And suppose for adults, some adults who are not able to develop antibodies in themselves, they are unable to develop antibodies to a particular disease, a particular virus, then what can be done? Then the medical inventions are happening. Suppose I'm a healthy person, and my body has either through infection or through vaccine has already developed antibodies in myself to a particular virus, for example to this coronavirus. So my body is already having antibodies in my against this coronavirus. So another person is there who is not so healthy and who has not developed any antibodies in him. So what can be done is the hospital, the doctors can take my blood, the plasma out of it, and extract the antibodies from myself and inject that antibodies to other person who is unable to develop antibodies. So that is, indirectly the antibodies are supplied to a person to fight against a particular virus. That is passive adaptive immunity. So the adaptive immunity is developed in a particular person from outside. It's not done inside. So if it is done inside within the body itself, that's called active. If it is done from the outside, either from the mother or from any other person who is healthy, that's called the passive adaptive immunity. All right. So these are the two adaptive immunities. So now, when it is given the blood, the antibodies are supplied from one person to the other. That's called the plasma therapy. That's called plasma therapy. You might be hearing this word these days. So plasma therapy also is there for the elderly people or the people who are unable to develop antibodies can take those antibodies from the donors who are healthy and who have already developed antibodies in themselves. All right, so this is what is about the immunity. So immunity is basically the ability to fight against a particular antigen. Antigen means virus or bacteria or any toxin. Okay. Now the immunity has to be developed. Now I'll tell you in some other videos how to develop, increase your immunity system, strengthen your immunity system and all. There's other things. Now let us try to learn what is what first of all. Okay, now the topic which I have written here at the beginning is that the herd immunity. Okay, now we have learned what is immunity. Now what is herd? Herd means mob or large community. You can say community or large crowd. Okay. Now this is basically a contagious disease. If a disease is contagious, it can spread so easily from one person to the other person. So in that case, if an individual achieves immunity, it's not sufficient for really. The herd immunity means a mob or a crowd or a large community, when it receives a sufficient amount of immune persons, then it can stop that particular disease to spread. Okay, for example, this coronavirus is there, and this coronavirus also is spreading like anything. It is spreading so fast, one person to the other person, and it is exponentially increasing. The number of positive cases which are coming per day are going high and high and high. They are not coming down. It's not coming down. So how can it come down? So let us see. So it comes down only when the virus does not find any target. No more new persons to enter in. The virus cannot stay, outside the body. This particular coronavirus only stays in the human bodies, and it will only multiply in the human bodies. When it is there outside, it will survive only for a few hours or few days, and it will vanish. And the virus also cannot survive in other animals or any birds. It is mainly survives in human beings. It's not. There's a difference between virus and the bacteria that we'll see later. Virus is not a living organism. It's just a DNA material or RNA material, and bacteria are living organisms. So virus is only having DNA, RNA, no mitochondria. A mitochondria is the engine to make the cell to stay alive. So that is not there in virus. It's just a DNA material, and that will cause damage to the persons which it enters in. All right. So herd means the mob, community, or large crowd. So the crowd has to achieve certain. Some percentage of the crowd has to receive immunity in order this particular disease to eradicate, to cease completely from that particular community. Okay, Now in this, before understanding this, we need to understand few words in this. Okay, one thing is, one term is called basic reproductive number. Basic reproductive number. Number, which is denoted as R naught. So what is basic reproductive number? This means that average number of healthy persons which can be infected by an infected person. Okay, so now it is different for different diseases, different for different viruses. For measles and all, it was estimated to be 18. That means every person who has infected with measles is capable of passing it on to 18 people. 18 people on average. Okay, on average. So, and different diseases are having different numbers like this. And again, in different locations it is different. So in India, it was estimated so far that for this coronavirus, this R naught is 1.37. Say for example, it is first say it is equivalent to 1.4. That means every infected person on average can pass the infection to 1.4 people. How 0.4 means? It is an average. Okay, that means for example, you take 10 infected people. 10 people who are infected with the coronavirus can pass the disease to 14 people. 100 people will pass it to 140. 1000 will pass it to 1400 people. Now just understand simple mathematics here. For any pandemic or any virus spread to cease, to stop, this R naught has to become less than 1. If R naught is less than 1, then eventually the disease will cease. It will not spread to so many people. One person will infect to one person only. After this, the first person becomes alright, the second person will pass it on to another person. Like this, 1 to 1 only. It will cease. Only when R naught is greater than 1, slightly greater than 1, slowly the number of infected people will keep on increasing. Okay, so now the idea is, the goal is to bring the basic reproductive number R naught slightly less than 1, and with minimal loss of lives of the people. That is very important. So we have to bring this reproductive number, basic reproductive number, less than 1 without losing more lives. How can we bring this down? Say for example, now this is the number 1.4. That means now suppose we have a community which is having say 140 crores of people, of population. So our country India is having roughly this 140 crores, 135 or something, 135 crores. So let us say 140 crores. So 140 crore people are there. So in this 140 crore people, the basic reproductive number for the coronavirus is 1.4. Every person is infecting 1.4 people, and 10 are infecting 14, and 100 are 140, like that. It is increasing. Now to bring it down, to make the whole community of this 140 crores of people become immune. That means they become herd immune. In order for this community to achieve herd immunity, how many people have to become immune to this particular disease? So let us try to calculate that. Okay. Now they have to receive some percentage of these people should receive the adaptive immunity. I told you, before, adaptive immunity has to be there, and either there are two ways. Either naturally, that means actively or passively also. You know, through active means there are two ways again, either by the infection itself or through vaccine itself. Through vaccine or through infection, or through passive. Passive means by taking, by receiving the antibodies from another persons. There are three ways. Through all these three methods, somehow we have to make a particular group of these people, percentage of these people, to become immune to this coronavirus. That number will be say 0.4. It has to be less than 1, right? It's going on. When R naught equal to 1, so the number of infections or number of cases, the positive cases, does not increase. It will become stable. It becomes constant. Okay. When R naught is 1, it becomes constant. So if there are 1000 infected cases are there, the 1000 will be passing on to 1000 only, and these 1000 will become cured. Out of this 1000, maybe 990 may be cured and 10 may be dying or something like that, whatever it is. So 1000 are gone, only 1000 cases will be there. This 1000 will again pass it on to 1000 only. So at any time, only 1000 will be there. Okay, so when R naught equal to 1. So we have to make a point, so 0.4 by 1.4 into, what is the total number here? 140 crores into 140. So this much number of population in a crowd here, which is having 140 crores of people, should become immune, should have attained adaptive immunity against this particular coronavirus in order to achieve herd immunity in this. Say it is India here. So in India, we have 140 crores, for example, say roughly, it is, I have taken more. So this much people should have received herd adaptive immunity in order to say that, in order to achieve herd immunity in India. So this will become how much? This is 0.4 by 1.4 means 1 by 3.5 into 140, that is equal to 40 crores. So out of 140 crores, 40 crore people, it's a very, very big number. 40 crore people of the country should have been achieved adaptive immunity either through infection or through vaccination or through plasma transplantation or by getting antibodies in themselves, whatever means it may be. So they should have achieved immunity, 40 crores. So then only one person will be then it becomes stable, and slowly, obviously, more people will become immune, among those people, and then slowly this will become, R naught will become less. So it should, we have to actually more than this, slightly more than around say 50 crores. If we make it 50 crores, then R naught will become less than 1. Then eventually the number of positive cases coming every day will keep on coming down. So this will happen in two ways. I said 2 ways, either through natural infection or through vaccination. So if it has to happen through natural infection, also, then what is the use of doing all these things? You may ask, what is the use of implementing the lockdowns and following all these guidelines like wearing masks, social distancing, and taking precautions and all those things? There is use. There is. Okay, this basic reproductive number R naught can be reduced either by making more people immune to a particular virus, also by making more people hiding from the virus. So when the virus is not finding any target, the antigen is not finding any target, then it will not pass on to the more people. Okay, so the R naught is nothing but it is basically the average number of healthy people who can be infected by an infected person. Okay, so this can be reduced also by taking precautions to hide from the virus, that is wearing masks, keeping social distancing, and and following proper hygiene, washing your hands, sanitizing your surroundings. And these precautions have to be taken continuously by all the people, healthy people, vulnerable people, young people and old people. Every person has to take these precautions continuously. This should become a lifestyle to all people, so that the virus will not find a target. When the virus cannot find a target, then R naught will be reducing. Obviously it will be reducing, and when it becomes less than 1, eventually it will cease. The curve will fall. And if you don't follow any precautions, not wearing masks and not following social distancing, and you're living the life as it is without lockdowns and everything like that, number of people, immune people required to achieve the herd immunity in our country is 0.4 by 1.4 into 140 crores, that is 40 crores are required. But in addition to this, and if you follow all the precautions, strictly follow the rules and regulations, then the virus cannot find target. And even before getting this number of 40 crores, the curve will start decreasing. That means the R naught may become less than 1. Okay, so the following the guidelines and precautions is necessary not only for protecting the vulnerable people, but also to make this R naught less than 1 sooner. So among these 40 crores, there should not be the older people, the vulnerable people. The most vulnerable people are the elderly people who are above 60 or who are having health issues like any other weaknesses, diseases, lung weakness or heart disease or kidney disease. They're more vulnerable. So these vulnerable people have to be protected. Now I said that we have to reduce the basic reproductive number R naught slightly less than 1 through vaccination or through natural infection, keeping in mind without losing more lives to this. The fatality has to be reduced. So that's the thing, So that is what we can do now, basically, nothing more than that. So before the vaccine comes, so if you are a young and healthy person in your family, so you can go out and be exposed to the virus, but make sure that you are not passing it on to the vulnerable people. Take care of vulnerable people. The vulnerable people have to be extra cautious, have to protect themselves, and the healthy people also will have to take care of the vulnerable people, keep them in mind, and should not pass the virus to them. You don't know whether you have the virus or not, so better keep distance from them and maintain all the precautions, follow all the precautions, if not for yourself, but for the sake of the vulnerable people. Okay, that's the only thing what we can do. But eventually, when this R naught becomes less than 1, means for India, when 40 crores of people have attained the immunity to this virus, either through natural infection or through vaccination or through plasma therapies or whatever it is, then only the natural herd immunity comes in India. Otherwise not. So that's what. Okay, thank you. All the best. Take care.